Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We couldn't be more excited to have each and every one of you. I think we're at a very interesting time and seeing a fascinating technological shift as it pertains to how Web3 and NFTs are disrupting and breaking into the music industry. And I think we have an all-star panel of guests that all have their own unique perspective and purview as to how this is taking shape within the music industry. So we're really excited to dive into a lot of these different topics. So let me briefly introduce some of our panelists, and then we'll jump right into some of these different topics. So I'll go from left to right. Jillian Rothman, VP of New Business and Ventures at Warner Music Group, overseeing a lot of the different Web3 initiatives, both internally for some of the active roster and labels, as well as a little bit of the investment strategy as it continues to evolve and support and invest into this new wave of Web3. We have Verite, very, very talented musician. She's been independent artist for 8 years, has sold over 500 NFTs that have created the equivalent value of 60 million streams, and very much at the forefront of what it looks like to kind of venture from this Web 2 world, if you will, into Web 3 while still catering to all these different fan bases and growing this overarching fan base and community. David Greenstein, one of the founders of Sound.xyz, one of the leading music NFT marketplaces. They've generated over $2 million in revenue for different artists that have minted and sold NFTs on the platform, and have generated one of the strongest secondary markets for music NFTs in the entire music NFT landscape. And last but definitely not least, we got MoRuf, incredible artist himself, was recently featured on Snoop Dogg's mix that was minted on Sound.xyz, and has been an incredible community builder. Yeah, big shouts for everybody. Awesome. So to dive right in, I think we'll kind of start a little bit higher level, go into some more tactical ways people can get involved in the space, and then we're going to close out with a little bit of Q&A towards the end. So if you do have a question, feel free to hang on to that, and towards the end, we'll be running around with some microphones. But we'll just kind of start. We'll actually start with MoRuf and work our way back here for this first question. I'm just curious, what inspires you as to how Web3 and NFTs can positively disrupt the music industry?
Great question, bro. I just think, in a sense, it just actually finally allows the artists to do everything their own rather than, the middleman. I have to deal with his manager. Oh, I have to deal with uploading the hair or blah. It actually gave the artist the power. And that was something I think that a lot of artists felt as though that they lacked in the past. And they felt like restless. And also, in the midst of having the power, it actually gave them the opportunity to build something for themselves and invest it back into them. And it didn't take so long. It was a little quick in time in a sense.
Appreciate that, David.
Yeah, I think right now we're in a bit of a renaissance for our artists to be able to experiment and explore with their music in new ways. And I think a little bit of backstory on everything that I think is going on is today I think the cost of making music has never been cheaper, but the cost of getting heard has never been higher. And I think there's never been a more incredible time for independent artists to basically break through. And I don't think anybody, at least I want to meet them, has the blueprint for how to break an artist in 2022. And the answer over the past couple of months and years has been TikTok, which we can get into. But there's going to be new ways and new forms, and so therefore, I think the playing field is pretty even right now, and it's basically everyone for themselves. And I think when a new space emerges, I think what music NFTs are going after is letting artists make a full-time living off their music, off 25, 50, 100, 1,000 true fans, and rebalancing kind of the model of how music is kind of valued today, and then also giving listeners a bit of a skin in the game as well, and being able to show off and prove who is first to discover an artist. So I think it's really about building something new. And with any new movement, it always starts with the up and coming independent artists.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about TikTok at some point. But I think that artists being the center of their own ecosystems is made more possible through Web3. And I got into this space because I recognized that the systems and structures that I had built my career on via streaming social media started to become increasingly algorithmically gated, and I no longer had access to the audiences that I had spent years essentially developing unless I paid a certain fee. And recognizing that the lifeblood of any artist's project is the direct connection to those fans, it kind of set me off on various experiments to how to connect one-on-one, and NFTs become a tool for that, but also experimenting with valuation. Essentially, streaming is, I think, an extremely vital innovation, but there are negative consequences and unintended consequences, which is now that music is free. And so what NFTs and Web3 allow us to do is essentially experiment with tiers of value above free. And I think we're still in that experimentation phase. We don't really know what people value, and there's sentimental value, but there's also how much are people willing to pay for digital goods? Do fans value digital goods? And so it's been a really exciting time playing with all of that valuation.
The thing that inspires me most is just that I really think we're on the brink of a new technological era. And with every major shift in technology, the way we create, distribute, and discover music has changed. So, the reason why albums are a certain length is because that's what could fit on vinyl. The reason why songs are a certain length is because that's what radios wanted. The reason now why we have certain patterns to song is because that's what gets picked up by algorithms or by TikTok influencers. So the thing I'm most interested in is well, now that we have this new technology, how is that going to change the way artists create music, share it, monetize it, and how labels distribute and market it also? And so what inspires me is that we now have all of these new tools, and I'm really excited to see where, the talented people on this panel, how they play with them and what comes of that.
1,000%, all super well said. And I'll just kind of add one point as to what inspires me and us and a lot of what we're doing at NFT Now. And I think music is interesting because it's often said that there's no middle class in music. You're either the top 1% artist that's generating the vast majority of the revenue in the music industry. It's very similar to that of a venture capital model, like a home run model, where you're almost expecting to take losses on 8 or 9 of your investments because one of those is going to return the entire portfolio. So what that ends up leading to is you're either kind of a elite artist or almost a starving artist. And I think on the flip side, there's always been this notion of 1,000 true fans, which is Kevin Kelly's principle that if you have 1,000 fans that are willing to spend $100 on you a year, that's enough to generate what's effectively a 6-figure income, which can make ends meet and be an honest income for your creative pursuit. I think in the current music industry, that's a bit of a fallacy, and there's not much economic viability unless you have a massive fan base. But then you have artists like one interesting example is RAC. He's been able to generate the equivalent revenue of 10 million streams through 100 different NFT collectors. So I think just drastically changing the lifetime value of a fan and how big of a fan base you really need in order to earn a meaningful income as a musician is what's massively inspiring and kind of disruptive to me. So to distill that and make it a little bit more tactical, I'm curious from your guys' perspective, and I know you've all approach drops, and there's no one-size-fits-all formula for how to go about dropping your music or NFT in the music space. And there's still tons of white space to innovate and emerge. But what, from your perspective, are interesting models to approach drops for your music NFTs? And David, maybe you can kick it off just with the sound model.
I was gonna talk a little bit on also what you just brought up, which is today the value of music is fundamentally broken. But the reason why is that we're talking about value. I always use an example. Take any large artist. I'll take Drake. And if you take all of Drake's fans and you put them in a line and ask them how much do you want to pay for Drake's music, apparently they all said 0.003 cents per stream, and that seems unlikely if you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of fans. And so the reason why the superstar starving artist economy exists is that's how the system was architected. You have to get tens of millions and hundreds of millions of streams in order to make any full-time living. That's by design. And then the problem is that there's only billions of people in the world. So obviously streams and people are not exactly equal, but millions and billions are close enough that it's not reasonable to expect every single artist to get tens and hundreds of millions of streams. And so part of what's going on here is to let artists experiment with setting the price, because who determined the price of 0.003 cents per stream? It wasn't the artist and it wasn't the listener. So who, and we can get into that, but it's largely the platforms and obviously some of the major labels behind it. And so this is really about giving creative control on the price side back to the artist, and on the listener side, it's about the way that we discover new music today is broken. songs are breaking everywhere else besides a music platform today. And I think part of that is because a lot of the way songs break, like on these music platforms, are through these curated playlists, but it's only those curated playlists are run by humans, and those humans have 2 ears, and there's 60,000 songs coming out a day. And so that's why things like TikTok have emerged, because you need a more tech-driven way to sort through the vast quantity of music. I think to get into your direct question on the drop, sometimes I go off topic, but I think, we started with 25 NFTs at 0.1. I honestly made the whole thing up, but I thought it sounded good. And I didn't really know if anybody would care when we started. And I thought like 2.5 ETH at the time of when we just started, that was like $10,000. That's 2.5 million Spotify streams paid out instantly. I thought that was kind of intriguing, and mainly because we were going after independent up-and-coming artists. And so I think it's a lot like playing a concert is the analogy that I use. Like a lot of times artists will like play a smaller venue to focus on like that sellout and building hype, and then, gradually move up instead of playing Madison Square Garden and 25 people coming. And so we were really focused on making sure that we're building something sustainable and catering to those, because you don't need that many if this works. And so that was something there. But
totally agree with what David's saying. And even down to TikTok, it's based upon like building your community. I think that's the number one step. Even, down to Sound and other platforms, I think that was probably one of the most important things which I've learned. Because when you mention NFTs, everyone's like, okay, I'm about to drop one tomorrow. Cool, but you want people to buy your NFTs. I would hope so. You feel what I'm saying? So I think the ultimate approach of which I took and still taking to this day is continuously building that community of individuals so your NFT can actually get purchased. Showing up for people, spaces, retweet. I retweeted so many people within the past 9 months of me being an NFT, because it's really about showing love and support. So when you actually show love and support the other people in Web3, based upon my experience, they do it back for you. So when it's your time to drop, they're like, oh, MoRuf dropping today? I'm definitely going to pull up because he did the same for me. So definitely building your community in whatever way works for you. Yeah.
I love that. And even Verite too. I mean, I know you've experimented with a couple different types of drops, and you probably have some plans. Maybe you can give us some alpha on some upcoming drops. But when it comes to effective models or how people should consider different types of drops, what are some of the standout models that have emerged for you?
Well, I think what David said is right. It's like you just made it up, and everything that I've done, it was an idea and I decided to execute, and then you gather data and it either worked or it didn't, and then you execute again, and you kind of are constantly adapting to what is succeeding and what doesn't necessarily resonate. And so for me, that's really what all of 2021 was. And I think I've distilled 3 like categories of drops that resonate with me and have worked really well. One of which is like one of ones, which essentially, if we're experimenting with the value of music, to me is an analogy people use as the Mona Lisa of music. It's inherently higher value. We're attempting to create digital scarcity by putting art on the blockchain, something that everyone can experience for free, but one person owns. And I've had a lot of success in that category. The second is essentially editions, right? And we can break that down. Sound is a mechanism for that, and there's ways to gamify that experience by essentially offering 25, 50, 100, etc. And another category of that is fractionalized ownership of music, where you actually pay out royalties to the owners of that. And so I did a drop with Royal where I sold 39% of a single to 505 fans, which is the first time I had any of my fans participate in anything Web3 who already weren't crypto native. So that narrative and framing actually does resonate. And I think we can learn a lot about that framing, bringing people in here. And the third is experiential. And essentially, I've been working with a company called IYK, where we're bridging digital and physical experiences. And so we built something called Guest Book for My Last Fan that allowed fans to claim NFTs, tap their phone, prove attendance, and we were able to airdrop them NFTs. And now I have that information, which historically has not been given to me. Ticketmaster Live Nation owns that data, and I can reward the people who consistently show up to shows and then continue to incentivize participation. So those are like the worlds in which I'm experimenting. And now I'm working on a full record, and it's how can I take everything that I've learned and kind of incorporate it into like a full album release that bridges Web 2 and Web 3 together.
And I'll piggyback on the end of your answer. We love IYK. I don't know if I can say anything specific, but shout out to the Atlantic team in the back who's working with them on something really cool. Yeah. I am in like super like building off of that last point really, and I hate the word bullish because like I'm a former death penalty attorney turned crypto bro. So saying the word bullish like irks me, but I'm very bullish on free NFTs, especially if it's your first drop, because I think the biggest thing that is not to I can't remember who said it, but someone I heard on a podcast recently, someone say be long-term greedy, not short-term greedy. And that has really resonated with me and our team, because the idea is if you can give something away, reward your loyal fans, bring them into the community, and then you know who they are, where you have the data. If you can do something like that gives something away instead of asking for something to start, that's how you can really build up credibility and loyalty. And then from there, now you know who your biggest fans are because you've rewarded them for coming to an event, or anything, whatever it is. Maybe it's an IYK tag that comes with buying your merch. Like you'll know who they are and where they are, and then that's who you can cater your like super specialized experiences and specialized one-of-ones to in the future. And so I love the idea of experimenting, especially in a bear market, with free NFTs, because I think that's how you kind of build the community. And I know, David, you're doing your first free drop with Black Dave, right?
Yeah, we did it today.
How'd it go?
It sold out.
Sorry, I'm stealing your job now.
Big shouts to Black Dave.
But I think that's
definitely follow him. He's constantly sharing incredible knowledge and has become an incredible kind of community builder in the space. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, two drops recently that we did that I thought were interesting. One with Black Dave, where there's always an opportunity to do things differently, especially when the kind of market shift. And Black Dave did a drop where he just did it for free, and one of his he said it was like his best song that he's ever done in Web3, and thought that was just really cool because you're basically betting on yourself and kind of aligns incentives. And there were a couple big drops outside of the music NFT space that did this recently with like the G Money and Mint One kind of Mint Pass that I thought were really interesting. And then I think to Jillian's point on being long-term greedy, like there was this song that went viral on TikTok and Twitter with like called Crypto Boy that Salem Elise
you all know it
did and I think there was something that she did that I thought was really, really cool. Was like there was a big opportunity for her to like try to make money on that because it kind of went viral, and she did a drop on Sound and gave away 100%, like 100, no secondary, primary, to the Center of Reproductive Rights, and didn't make $1 on it. And I thought that was really, and raised like 190,000. Shout out to NFT Now for covering it, which was really nice and everything. So yeah, I think those are two drops where they'll make their money in another drop or they'll figure it out, but it's a marathon.
Yeah, and I think just to build on the kind of notion of like a free NFT and to highlight something is that there is one of the most disruptive elements of NFTs is that it creates this new sense of ownership and ambassadorship at a much deeper level amongst fans. No longer are fans just passive consumers where they pay this $10 Spotify subscription, but now there's a deeper sense of vested interest through ownership that therefore drives more referrals, more ambassadorship. So I think that's a kind of very disruptive thing to think about. And even too, just to be able to reward those early fans. I think even on the podcast we did with you, David, you brought up this really interesting example of like, you're going to be able to take a snapshot of your first 100 NFT collectors by the time you're at MSG, and you're going to be able to have a dedicated section. Like, there haven't really been those moments in the music industry of really rewarding those super early super fans. So that is super fascinating from my perspective.
Or when you want to, there's an intermediary in between. Mike Shinoda, who is like working with Warner a lot, tells a story about how Linkin Park had one of the biggest Facebook communities, and they were just going to drop their album pre-release to that community, and all of a sudden Facebook changed the algorithm, and they like couldn't reach them anymore. So even when you can reach your truest fans, there's like intermediaries right now, and I think this changes all that.
For sure, 1,000%. No, and just to build on that too, it's like people, you're reaching like 5% of your audience on an Instagram post these days. Like, it's kind of gone into this like toxic downward spiral where you're just trying to focus on reach rather than depth and true community. So I'm curious, misconceptions about NFTs, because those things run rampant, as we all know. Would love for you and whoever wants to kind of jump in first, but just kind of dispel what are some common misconceptions. Lots of people are just catching random headlines or seeing other artists, but then not necessarily have the full context as to how to engage in the space. What do you think are some of the most important misconceptions to dispel in the space?
I'll say the first one, and sometimes me and my friends, we joke about it, but the whole NFT is a scam, type situation. And I'm not even going to hold you. Prior to me stepping into Web3, because all I knew about it was the Bored Apes, and I wasn't really hip to it at the time. And I was just like, But when I actually did my research and I learned about it, I was like, oh shit, like this is real. When I was able to sell a song on Sound, sell a song on Catalog. But I think the biggest misconception is like, it's a scam. But I think for those individuals who say or think that, like, do your research, before you judge anything. And actually, when I did my research, I realized, how real it was, the effect that I was able to create this in the metaverse. And now I'm able to create things outside of the metaverse based upon what I did in that realm. So, yeah, it's not a scam. Point blank period. That's my whole point. It's real.
I guess on my end, I think the biggest misperception is that it's just free money. I think if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. And so it's still unfortunately, it's a lot of hard work on everyone's end, the artists especially. And so I think the people in the space that make it look easy, they're the ones that are grinding behind the scene and really hustling. And I think, people are always looking for the low risk, high reward option, but it doesn't exist.
For me, it's the NFTs are going to revolutionize the music industry narrative. I don't think it's true. I think ultimately the same problems that we currently experience are going to be held over. And we've seen it with every technological innovation. Like I said before, there are unintended consequences. There's going to be marketplace oversaturation, but it is an opportunity for artists to utilize new tools in order to build sustainable foundations and ecosystems for themselves. And it's going to be really easy for artists to be complacent and be platform reliant, right? And I feel like in the sound chat, there's a lot of that. It's just like, you can't rely on sound to sell out your drop. You can't rely on the, catalog, etc. It's like everything that you do as an artist needs to feed back into the center. And Web3 and the tools on the blockchain are merely another tool in like a constellation of tools and revenue streams that independent artists need to have in order to succeed.
I think for me, it's the biggest misconception is that it's like silly. It's a toy. There isn't a real use case. And I think, but that really makes sense because I think with any truly disruptive technology, the technology moves at a pace that's much faster than its adoption. And we saw that with the internet. It was a super clunky user experience at first. We saw that with the telephone. It could only go 20 feet at first, so that all of these telco companies didn't want to actually invest in it, and big mistake. And so I think that's the same thing right now as well, where we're seeing people are saying, well, why do I need this? What's the actual utility? But I think as soon as we hit a certain amount of network effects and there's a certain amount of mainstream adoption, all of the utility will become, I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously, but but like I think all of the utility will become really, really obvious, and the network effects will just take off. And so I think the biggest misconception right now is like, what's the point of any of this? And obviously, I think we're at a crypto event, so I don't need to convince you guys, but I think that's the biggest misconception I always hear, even internally, is like, why are we investing in this? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, totally. And just to build briefly on this real quick, I think one last misconception that I'll bring up is the point that like everybody thinks NFTs are this like speculative investment of sorts, when in reality, I think NFTs are much more similar in their impact to social media as it pertains to how people have gone about growing, engaging, and rewarding their community. So I think people need to stop looking at this as like a pure investment in trying to make their career and their art an investable asset, and really need to think about ways to reward and grow and engage and build their community together. But I'm curious, and this is kind of for Mo and for Verite, like lessons learned, challenges you had to overcome going through your own drops. Like I know you've all done a handful of different drops, like recycle some of the hard knocks you might have had to gone through.
Jeez. I think for myself was learning, like the burnout is real, especially in Web3, in sense of I just felt like I have to be on my phone. I have to be on this Twitter space. If I'm not, then they're going to think I'm not part of the community. And all honesty, but I had to realize working at my own pace, like what works for me. It's impossible for you to show up for every single person. You can't make it at every single space. You might not be able to make it to that drop. So that was something in which I learned early on, because I remember after I did this drop with a song of mine called Canal Street, I did a party bid, and every day, like, let's go, we're at 1.5 ETH, and this for like 3 weeks. When I finally, sold it for 3.3 ETH, I was burnt, excuse my language, the fuck out, because I was just trying to do so much. But when I learned, like, you gotta pace yourself, even when it comes to your own drops or even other individuals. So once I kind of got a rhythm, it was one of the best decisions which I made, especially because Web3 moves so fast. So it's the whole FOMO, like, you're going to miss out, but you should be straight.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think from my perspective, it's something similar. A burnout, super real. I'm really good at functioning through it, though. But I think it's inherently uncomfortable for me in general to A, self-promote, and B, kind of adhere to the ideas of like community that are kind of popularized on Twitter sometimes. Like, I'm really antisocial. I interact with people in the ways that I interact, and I add value to the people around me in the ways that I do. And so it made me take a step back, because there's this feeling of pressure of like, yeah, I gotta engage, I gotta sit and like, I don't know, act like I want to be here. And so for me, again, it's like, but what's the mission statement? The mission statement is we're building artist-centric ecosystems and businesses so that I have the freedom to create the art that I want to create, distribute my art in the way that I want to distribute it, and make not only a viable living, but fucking crush it, right? And I think that all three of those things can exist together. And I think the focus is, how do you build that in a way that's like sustainable for me? And the way that you do it for you is going to be totally different. And the way David does it as a founder, and the way Jillian does it, like working for Warner, it's like everybody needs to focus on like what is actually sustainable. So I think like once I shifted that focus, I became less miserable.
I love that. And I guess one other topic I'd like to dive in a little bit with you, David, is I think right now there is a bit of a limited, I mean, you brought up an interesting point earlier, Verite, that when you kind of did the Royal drop, this was one of the first times where it wasn't really catering to your quote unquote crypto native fans. You were able to really have something that resonated with your broader fan base that may have no familiarity with NFTs. And I think that's critically important right now, because there's kind of a limited pool of music NFT collectors. And I think that's why some of the artists that are having the most success in this space might not have the biggest audiences, but they just have a really high proportion of crypto native audiences. So I'm curious, David, as somebody that's kind of really trying to build out this entire community and kind of unleash some of the potential of this technology, how you're thinking about onboarding just general music fans into the space to becoming music NFT collectors.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think there's a bit another misconception is like there's a reason why the crypto native audience is so important, is that's where a lot of the experimentation and explorations kind of come from. For me, I view it twofold, which is one, like if you're only going after the crypto native audience, like it makes the pressure on the product to be really, really good, because you do have to get a MetaMask or you do have to buy some ETH, and that to me is really, really important, because it helps focus the attention on, if it's not good enough, like it's not super sticky, you won't get people to care about it. And if it is that good and that sticky, a lot of people learned how to buy Bored Apes and some of the things that went on because there was, something at stake. And so that's something to me is really, really important, is to build something that's like so sticky and so incredible that people will download a MetaMask and make a wallet. And on the flip side, I think there are rails to start opening this up to other people. I think like things like credit cards and emails, wallets are like a bit of a growth hack, not necessarily like going after product market fit. But I think it is coming in terms of making this accessible to as many people as possible. To me, I think we're still exploring like what is the core reason why people buy these things, and figuring it out with a much smaller audience. And then from there, it's much easier to pour gasoline on something that's working than grow too quickly. So we're just being sustainable and thinking about that.
I love that. And to just kind of double down on one other question too, you kind of have two categories, or you broke it down into kind of like three different categories of NFTs that you consider. Another like two-part framework would be like art and utility. Like there's the very utility-centric NFTs. I think Steve Aoki and what he's done with Aokiverse to build this fan club where you can get early access to music, free tickets to shows, merch. It's kind of a modern-day fan club is the utility side. And then on the art side, it's kind of like digital collectible, very much what Sound's doing. Do you see music NFT consumption being a thing, or is it more like the modern version of like, I have a vinyl to collect music just to celebrate and engage in this new way, but like I'm still primarily listening to my music on streaming platforms? Because right now, even if you buy an NFT off Sound, it's like I can listen to it on my like Sound profile or OpenSea profile, but it's kind of this like at times can be a broken consumption process. So I'm curious how you see the consumption of music NFTs evolving as the space matures.
Yeah, there's two problems in music, and there's really not much more. It's how do you help artists reach the most amount of people with their music, which is the consumption side, and how do you help artists make money on their music? The money side is much more straightforward to go after, because most artists aren't getting paid. So pay artists anything, and they'll start coming. But on the consumption side, it's a little bit harder, because Spotify, truthfully, nobody's complaining about Spotify. It's $9.99 a month for every song. Like as a consumer, it's a pretty good deal. And so I think the consumption side is going to take a little bit longer to explore on kind of how to build something on that. I think the thing I will say is I think it's less about like replacing Spotify, and it's more about what's the unique opportunity today. And to me, that's a place to discover and support emerging up and coming artists, because I think, music discovery is like most people like aren't discovering new artists on DSPs today. They're discovering them on TikTok or YouTube or, anywhere else besides the DSPs. And so on my end, I think the discovery side is going to become very important, and you might slowly seep towards the consumption side, but I think it will look a lot more like what made SoundCloud special or what made TikTok special in the beginning. Is that it's about the independent and up and coming emerging artists. It's less, I always say it's like about the next Drake more than it is about Drake. And so that's kind of how I see it playing out.
For sure. And for Jillian, I'm curious too, because like I think obviously NFTs and Web3, a lot of the ethos is this notion of decentralization. It's created this more direct consumer model where artists are able to directly sell to fans. Do you feel this puts some of kind of the major label model at risk? And then I guess on the other side, how are you really rather leaning into and embracing this change?
I think what it lets artists do is have more of a choice. But what we've been hearing today is that if you really want to lean in and you really want to do a Web3 project well, and you really want to bring and build a Web3 community well, it takes a lot of work. I mean, we're talking about the 1,000 true fans theory and whatever, but that requires you to cater to 1,000 fans. I mean, imagine having to release your music, you go on tour, create merch, promote it, and constantly talk to your fans and create like special stuff just for them. I mean, I don't know how you guys sleep. You probably don't, right? Like, I think that barely, right? So I think there is a really big opportunity for labels to come in and be partners in this space and say, listen, we will help you manage your Web3 communities. We will help you figure out what they're asking for, what they're demanding. We will help you create the content, because already you have to create millions of types of content for varied platforms all over the place. Some is audio visual, some needs to be edited, some is live, some is behind the scenes. You know, like, I think artists do need a team and do need help. And so I think there's a really big opportunity for labels to step in and provide partnership in that space. So but at the same time, it gives independent artists who don't want that the choice and a new avenue to not use that. So I think it's really about what each individual artist is interested in and what value a label could provide them if they choose to go that route.
Yeah, for sure.
I definitely want to add on. I love what you said, because, you know, a lot of, you know, I know some artists, they be like, you know, I don't need a label, da-da-da. But I personally think the most successful Web3 artist is going to be the one who is savvy in the Web2 as well. Might even have a label. And I think that's the ultimate goal. You know, even myself as an artist, I'm using my Web3 experience as leverage when I walk into these meetings. Like, you know, respectfully, this is what I was able to do on my own. So,
like, what can you provide to me?
I
get it.
You know, so use it as leverage, right? And as I'm tapping in or, you know, doing partnerships with other labels, it could bring my value on my Web3 music up that much more. Like, whoever's bought MoRuf's first NFT, the price went up, you know? And I think that's I think that should be the artist's ultimate goal, is to get heard by as many people as possible. At least that's my goal. Because, you know, some artists, they might just be like, I'm good with being on Sound, Catalog, Zara, I'm good. But, you know, I think the ultimate goal is to use it as leverage and assist you to elevate, you know, your art.
Because that's the big paradox, right, of the 1,000 True Fans theory is like, great, I can make a decent living, but like, I want people to hear and experience my art. I want to change culture. I want to build a brand. And so I think the 1,000 True Fans theory is wonderful until you realize, like, no, my music is fucking amazing, and it, like, everyone should hear it. I should sell out arenas, like, you know, and if not, at the very least, I want the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I'm curious too, when it comes to just on the label side, how you think about a lot of the offense you're playing too is investing in this next wave of companies that are ushering in this new era of Web3. Like, what are some of the different growth sectors? How do you, obviously we're still very early on in the grand scale adoption of all of this. What spaces or specific sectors or types of companies are exciting you as to what you think will really mature to impact the industry in a big way over the long term?
Yeah, so the team I'm on at Warner also runs our corporate venture fund. And so we invest in seed and Series A companies, and it's not like a venture fund in the sense that it's a true defined fund, but we have like a corporate balance sheet fund. And so we are focused a lot on, all of our investments are strategic, right? They're not financial investments. So there has to be a reason that this company is going to help our artists, help our content, or push forward the space in an interesting way. And we've looked a lot right now on Web3 gaming. So we invested in Forte, which is a back-end infrastructure company. They're awesome. And also a lot in like how artists will manage their communities. So we invested in this company, Open, which is a platform for artists to create like on-chain communities. And then we've invested in Dapper Labs, like pre-NBA Top Shop, so early to that. And so that was again about how do you express digital identities and interests, which is something we're super interested in, because, you know, I see this guy over here with his Baby Keem sweatshirt. Like, we love to show off like our musical identity as part of who we are. So how do we do that in digital and virtual spaces? So we're really interested in expression, in gaming, in the metaverse. We invested in Roblox. Like, that's probably like a Web 2.1 platform. I don't know what we'd call that. And so we're always looking to sort of like what can help create new content, distribute new content, monetize it in new ways, connect artists with fans, or give fans new opportunities to sort of express themselves.
Yeah, no, super exciting. Super excited to see it continue to evolve. Well, I'm going to ask kind of one more closing question before we shift to Q&A. So if you do have a question, get ready. But as kind of collectively here, as people that are really at the front lines and innovating and testing new things, what do you think are some of the key challenges and opportunities that we all collectively are tackling when it comes to fostering mainstream adoption and unleashing some of the potential of NFTs and of Web3 in the music industry?
So I gave this example the other day and it was like great. So I'm just going to repeat it. But have you guys seen the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin? And there's a scene where Jonah Hill's character goes into the eBay shop and he picks out these like awesome boots. And they're like these super metallic, like crazy go-go dancer boots. And he's like, I would like to buy these boots. And the woman who owns the store, who's the love interest, is like, well, you have to go on eBay and buy them. And he's like, well, they're right here. Can I just buy these boots? She's like, no. This store like puts boots on eBay, so you can go and buy them on eBay. And but I'm here. Can I just give you the money for them? So I think the biggest challenge right now is the onboarding people into these platforms and giving them the tools and the wallets and all this other stuff, because we've done a bunch of POAP activations, and so I love POAP, but you go and people are like, wait, so I have to download an app and then get a wallet and then do all this other stuff? Like, why? But I can see the image. Like, why can't I just have it and post it and show my friends I was here? So the biggest challenge, I think, right now is all of those onboarding tools so that people either see the value in why you have to go to eBay to buy the boots, or we make it so much easier to go to eBay to buy the boots. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And I know there's millions of companies and billions of dollars working on it, so I'm pretty optimistic that we'll figure it out. But I think that's the biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, I think the why of why are we building it? And then why would anyone want it? And I think it's really easy in like a building stage where there's a fuck ton of money being thrown around for everybody to like be super excited and hyped and optimistic about what they're building, but realizing that like, I keep saying not every fan is going to be a collector, because that's a particular psychology of somebody who wants to collect things, and not every collector is going to be a fan, and we actually can't orchestrate the motivations for people to purchase digital goods because we're creating a new category of assets. And so I think it's, from my perspective as somebody who is kind of building and ideating over here, but also very much on the ground level, as an artist with the people who listen and resonate with the art that I create, very conscious of why am I doing this? Who and what is the outcome? And I'm finding that creating the bridge between IRL and the digital experience is really the crux of that. But again, it's all experimentation, and we all really are making it up as we go because we're building it.
Yeah, I think on a more music-specific point, I think the thing that kicks off any new trend in music is always like breaking a song and having an artist really emerge onto that like global platform. And I think that is going to be the challenges. We talked a little bit about the consumption side, but it's going to have to get consumed everywhere. And I think that's something that the monetization is only one half of the equation. And I think it's the critical like crossing the chasm point will be one that there's some large mainstream artist that emerges, and then that same business model works for somebody who has 1,000 true fans, and they can coexist in the same ecosystem together without one taking away from another. So I think that's something that
I'll agree. In sense of like one of my biggest challenges, which I recently, or just in general, since I've been tapped in, is definitely the onboarding. In sense of people not truly understanding. I think David mentioned like that it's really free money, and it's not that. Like from the outside, like you really have to put in the work. you really have to do the knowledge. So I would say onboarding, but that's what I love about events like these, are the fact that festivals open back up, for the people who don't believe it or think it's a scam. When they come to an event like this, they're like, oh shit, like they're actually humans, so that's why I love like what NFT Now is doing, are even a few of the homies who like minted like their songs live during their shows. You feel what I'm saying? Like figuring out new ways to be innovative within the Web3 space, because as I said, it moves so quickly, and with it moving so quickly, things get old quick. You feel what I'm saying? So I think that's something I'm saying like two answers in one, but definitely the onboarding and figuring out new ways just to keep it innovating and people excited. So why should they buy your NFT? And I guess that might come even with utilities and things of that nature.
1,000%. Absolutely love that. Well, thank you all. Absolutely incredible. Very excited to take a couple of questions from the audience.
Do you guys take into consideration, like, due to the fluctuation of the prices of certain crypto coins, like, would that like cause stress with what you guys are doing? Just out of curiosity, like just like the fluctuation of the prices of crypto.
Not really. I really think this is a 3 to 5 to 10 year play of building. It's not fun when shit crashes. Like, I'm not stoked. But that being said, it's really about, I think someone said long-term greed. It's like we're really here to build the future of what is possible for artists and for music consumption.
I'm not gonna hold you. I don't like the way I feel, but we're human. But at the same time, I'm like myself, Verite, everyone up here, like we're in here for the long haul. So it's like I'm not frightened, but it's just allowing me, okay, like how can I go back to the drawing board and figure out better ways? You feel what I'm saying? Rather than take it as a way of, oh shit, what I'm gonna do, And also this is gonna show the individuals who's actually into Web3 for the real reasons, and who's here just for like a little cash. You feel what I'm saying? So only the strongest survive, respectfully.
Yeah, and just to build on that point, I think like NFTs are definitely built, like the underlying technology of NFTs is the blockchain, but I do think there will actually be a little bit of like a decoupling between the price volatility of like crypto and having people like my personal opinion, like I don't think as we get to this point of mainstream adoption, people are gonna like the mainstream fan is going to be calculating the NFT they're going to purchase based on the ETH price. The world still runs on dollars. So like I think fiat, like even some of the big platforms like Royal that you dropped on, where you made that example that this was like the first time you could really onboard your average fan, your average consumer. They're very transparent about their pricing in dollars. They make it easy to set up a wallet with a credit card. So I think it's like the underlying tech and less of this tied to the crypto volatility. I see Jordan Shaw has a question in the back. We definitely got to run him a mic. And Terrence and Jordan.
Hey, yeah, I want to thank Sam and Matt, NFT Now, and everybody on the panel for this great event. So my question is first for Jillian.
Yes.
So being that you're coming more from the angle of record label, what are you guys' plans to counteract the fact that most artists don't get paid? So the way you're structuring whatever you're doing moving forward regarding NFT projects, are you going to structure it in a way where it's more beneficial to the artist, or is it going to be that antiquated record label style of things, or have you guys not crossed that bridge yet?
And did you just say Jordan arrived? Is Jordan here?
And let's talk numbers.
No. I confidentially, like, this isn't being recorded. There's no one here,
hypothetical
right?
Numbers.
We're talking to some big artists about what it would look like to be a Web3 partner. Like, what does that mean? How do we build their community with them? And the idea is that all of the incentives will be aligned. So us, them, and fans will all participate in that community in an interesting and new way. And so I think, I won't get into like percentages, but I think the idea would be it more incentivizes our teams to work directly with the artists and their fans to increase the value of certain propositions and the community as a whole. And I don't necessarily mean like the financial value. Like, I don't mean like the Jillian token is now worth more than it was yesterday, but just the value of being part of the Jillian community goes up because it gives you access to certain things or utility or special utility, or you just feel a specific purpose about it. So I think there are ways to better align everyone's incentives, but I think it'll sort of depend on which artists want to lean in the space with us, because they have to really be willing to fail with us. It's tough and it's interesting and we want to do weird, innovative things, and not every artist is going to want to like look like a fucking idiot some days and like have a failed project. So I think we want to work with the artists who want to work with us also, but I think it does help us sort of be true partners with them, because we're all kind of in the community together.
So another question. So have you guys actually tapped into any artists like now?
Yeah, I mean, we've done, right now we're in a lot of like education phase,
Right.
But we've done a handful of like specific drops and projects, a lot of times with partners already in the space. So Weethan, who's an Atlantic artist, did a drop on Sound. One of is here I don't know where he went. One of is here who we're partners with, and we're working on something really cool with them. There was a Pooh Shiesty that NFT Now covered, a Pooh Shiesty Smilesverse collaboration. So there's a lot of things that artists are sort of starting to get their feet wet.
And that was through you guys.
And Atlantic Records
Right.
labels.
Perfect. Yeah, I've done a lot of work with Atlantic. I've been Sam knows I've been in the music business for quite some time.
Okay.
But so with those projects, did you guys make it more beneficial to the artists, or how do you feel it was structured?
I think the artists are very happy with the deals they did and how it came out. I don't know that I am allowed to divulge their confidential information about.
Right. No, I'm just curious because I see Dave. I know what Dave's platform has.
Yeah.
So I just was kind of curious.
No, I think the artists that have worked on specific projects, I think are very comfortable and happy with the level of value and services that the label provided, and that matching, sort of their take on the other side.
And I've been hogging this mic. I'll promise I'll go.
We said we wanted tough questions.
No, tough questions. So this is my thing. I love what you're saying, but you said something interesting. You said the artists were happy with what was presented to them, but a lot of artists that had bad deals in the past were happy with what was presented to them, but it wasn't necessarily like a good situation for them. Like, I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory. Like, I'm Clep. I rapped with Junior Mafia and Biggie. So we were a prominent 90s rap group, and we had a horrible contract, but we sold a lot of records. So we saw that whole dynamic of the entertainment industry. So it may look pretty to them, but my question was more along the lines of, do you honestly feel like whatever you presented to them was fair? Or
I think the really interesting thing about this space is so much is going to be public and transparent that we will have to stand behind the shares what we do and what the cuts are, and I think we'll have to stand behind it because it'll be public and known.
So I just watched Illmind put out, in order to have access to his streams moving forward, he used to be like on Twitch and used to stream his beat production sessions, but now you have to own one of his NFTs to see him make beats now. Do you think there are any experiences like that or assets that are currently underutilized that could be used in conjunction with NFTs moving forward?
I think it's a really difficult balance to have a marketplace conditioned to have access to all content for free and then start financially gating it. And I think that's something that both like artists and platforms are going to have to contend with as we grow, because the idea is, at the baseline, I want all of my music to be accessible for free, and I want to be accessible at free, but it is creating structures by which we can better create value for what the value that we provide to people. And so I think that it's going to be a really interesting, and some people are going to horribly fail and some people will succeed at figuring out how to structure how they interact with their fans and their community, and allowing fans who maybe have the funds and are able to pay more to be able to, while not detracting from the experience that we've already been giving them.
Yeah, and I think there's no one-size-fits-all answer, and I think Illmind is somebody that's a prolific producer, so there's people that really want to see him produce and deconstruct his process of production. I think you did a fair amount of work with Masego, and the Masego record To Dow actually was a drop on OneOf as a platform, and you could actually, by purchasing the NFTs, get the songs of the stems of the To Dow record, enter a remix competition, and potentially via sweepstakes through holding the NFT, get song feedback in a session with Masego and with FKJ. So I think like you're not creating new desires, but you do want to understand what are the desires of your specific fan base and audience and use that to inform how you might be able to gate value, if you will. Any last thoughts?
That was well said. No, I think you killed that. Yeah.
I was going to comment on that, but we're going to be here for 30 more minutes if we do that. So.
We did such a good job, team. Thank you so much for putting this on.
For sure. And thank you,
Appreciate it,
everybody,
guys.
for coming out. Really appreciate all of our panelists. Best of luck in your journeys. We're here to help. So is everybody here. Thank you all so much.